Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third edition of Power of the Pen. I am your host, TJ Stevens, joined as always by Miss Amy, the Queen of Kentucky, to my right. Is it my right? Yes, my left, I guess. And then below me, Zach Haydorn. He is our guest tonight. Zach, how are you doing this evening?
Guys, I'm doing great. Doing great. It's a beautiful summer night here, and super glad to be here with you guys. So thank you so much for the invite, and pumped to chat with you. This is great.
So the book we're here to discuss that you just have put out is Stunning: The Wrestling Artistry of Steve Austin. There it is. And Amy's going to start us off here with the questions, but I'm just going to tell you, I will ask you more about this later, but I appreciate the angle you took with this book. I thought no one has done this before. So, Miss Amy, go ahead and take us away. This is going to be very interesting.
Thank you.
I do agree with you, TJ. As you said, we'll get into it, but I do like the structure of the book. And I did notice one thing on the back. It says it's unauthorized. What exactly does that mean?
Well, there's some basically what it means and what it signals is that Steve Austin himself was not a part of the project. So it basically is there really to make sure that the legal side of the book is taken care of. The project really, from the start, we knew pretty early on that it was going to be impossible to get Steve just because of his other contractual obligations that he has, like to WWE and what he can be a part of, what he can't. Right. But really, the vision for the project lived outside of that anyway. So,
right.
But you just had to slap it on there just because.
When you say we, who are you talking about? When you say we knew who's we?
Yeah, well, great question. I should have started with that actually, because I worked with Hybrid Shoot, which is an independent publishing company. Okay. That focuses on releasing books in the pro wrestling, MMA, boxing genre.
Oh, okay.
And the gentleman who runs that publishing company is Jonathan Snowden. So I don't know if you guys have. He did the big MMA encyclopedia. He wrote the Shamrock biography a few years ago. So he was kind of my mentor on the project. So when we, kicked around ideas and worked on outlines and editing and, the business of it, how we wanted to take it to the market, he was the kind of the person that I leaned on to do this. When I say we, I mean him and I. He didn't write the book, but he was, a mentor as far as like putting it together and just ideas and throwing things out there back and forth. So, I mean, was a pivotal person in getting it written. And that's outside of the fact that he was essentially the publisher too. So that's what I mean.
Okay. And I guess with the structure and the direction of the book, you didn't really need Steve Austin to interview or that kind of thing. I mean, is that kind of, I guess that's a pro of, if you do pros and cons versus a authorized or unauthorized, you didn't really, that wasn't a necessary, need. You didn't have to have him to be part of it. But do you know, is he aware of it? Is he aware of it?
Yes, he is aware of it. Yes. We're working to get him a copy. We're working on getting him a copy. So that'll be exciting. But yeah, it's really, the project, is just through really it's about the artistry of his in-ring wrestling career. So it's not a biography where you really need to talk to him about the different parts of his career. It's really just person studying his work and writing about it. And I've always said too, if the three of us wrote this book the same way, we all probably would have had we all would have seen different things, taken different things from it. I have long, have studied kind of the artistry of pro wrestling. That's how I kind of got my start in, in the space, writing about it, talking about it. So, it's certainly something that I had an interest in. But of course it's art. So everybody's going to have their different take on it. And that's why it absolutely wasn't necessary to have, him involved, as fun as that may have been. The project really the point of it is really to kind of study the work without him there. And, that made it really fun just in a different way.
Cool.
That's an interesting take you just had, because had Steve been a part of the book, it may have influenced it indirectly or accidentally in a way that could have drastically altered the book. So that's an interesting take. I like that.
Yeah, well, it would have. Yeah, I mean, again, it would have just been it would have been a different project. I mean, it would have been an entirely different project. I would have been really kind of, I guess that's just the best way to put it. It would have been different than it is. And I really like the way that it turned out. And I think, people would, but like I said, once you get kind of the subject of the work sitting right next to you, there's a different dynamic there for sure, different psychology about putting it together. So yeah, this definitely, it worked. It worked. And, once we kind of, like, I remember there being a moment where, we were really, it wasn't a we at this point. It was me, mapping out, okay, we've got the idea. We know where we're going with it. Now it's time to write it and get to writing and get to watching. Because, obviously the project included, in addition to writing, it included a ton of watching, like, his work. And I remembered, like, having the outline done and having the outline set. And there, was this moment, it was during COVID, and so I was just sitting there, like, it was really late at night and I had finished it. And I was like, whoa, like, all right, like, it's go time. Like, it's all on paper. Like, the roadmap is there. Like, the map is there. And now we got to just go and do it. And so, it was able to be more my thing, with just, me kind of writing it without him there.
So most of the time when, again, I'm a giant wrestling dork, and I have a couple dozen wrestling books. I've studied all promotions from Capital Wrestling to AWA to NWA, the territories, all that stuff. But usually when we get books on with a wrestling topic, it's usually a promotion or an event, or sometimes you'll get a biography of an individual person. But usually we chronicle the promotion of the time or the person with, business records and testimony and gates and things like that. And here you chose to go through Steve Austin's career, who's maybe not even arguably the biggest star ever. And you chose a completely different route to tell his story. So how did you, if you could describe how you did tell Steve's story here of his career, and how did you decide this was the way you wanted to tell your story?
Yeah. Wow. Great question. You're taking me back, and it's fun to talk to you about this. So I have been interested in, like, the art of professional wrestling forever. And, like, it's, really, like, in my, like, adult fandom, it's become more about that than, like, even, like, cheering on my, favorite wrestlers these days, like it was as a kid. And that, that's me. Everybody watches differently. Right. But I always thought it was fascinating, like, that, you put people in a building, you put a ring in there, two people, and then they create this thing that, like, stands the test of time, number one, but also, like, pulls a reaction from a crowd and from a big group of people, from people watching at home. And then I always remember I used to think about it like, well, it's kind of like a concert. Well, it is, but not really, because there's like a back and forth. Like, the art goes both ways. Like, it's like the wrestlers do something in the ring, gets a response. That response feeds back to them what they do. And I always thought that was just a unique equation. And there's no other art really on the planet like it in that way, where it's like it's influencing itself as it's being made. Mm-hmm. You have an artist, he paints a painting, people look at it, react. You read a book, people read it and react. Play, people aren't changing the play as it goes on. Like, it's just, it is what it is. And so I thought wrestling is really different in that way. And so as I've kind of, like, started to study that, I was always thinking to myself, like, I'd really like to read a book about that topic, about that subject as it pertains to pro wrestling. So initially, that's the book that I pitched, like, a book about the art of wrestling. Grandiose, like big
Whoa.
picture. And and
We're going to do a
and
couple
so
of
that's
volumes
what I
for that
pitched.
one.
No kidding.
Exactly. Exactly. And so that's when so I made the book pitch, and that's what it was. And that's when Jonathan got back to me, and he was like, look, we love the idea, but do you realize that you probably have like a 50,000 page book here with this? Like,
Mhm.
how about this? Like, have you thought about like studying exactly what you want to talk about, but from the perspective of like one star's career?
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And that makes it more manageable and really, more marketable too. I mean,
Right.
I'd be lying if I said that wasn't a part of this, because, we want to sell some books, of course. But it's just true. Like, you can, get fans of wrestlers to like, want to maybe do a little bit more of an in-depth study of their career, then we'd have it. So he was like, all right, so we love this big picture idea, but let's focus it more because it's really wide. Let's nail it down. And what would you think about that? And I said, I love that idea. And he goes, well, who do you think you do it on? Like, think on this and give me a few options. And I right away, I said, Steve Austin. And, I think initially his reaction was, like, you don't necessarily on the surface think of him as like an artist the way Kenny Omega is in the ring,
Sure.
or the way like
Mhm.
Will Ospreay is.
Mhm.
But to me, the art is about that equation again. It's the back and forth. It's like pulling the reaction out of the audience. And that is something that I think Steve Austin is unquestionably the greatest at in the history of the business. Like,
Oh, yeah.
he just has a masterful way about connecting with that audience, whether he's a heel coming up or whether he's a babyface or whether he's like, even as like the ringmaster. It's not a great gimmick, but the work is there to like pull that reaction out. And so that, that's kind of how it happened. So it started with this kind of like big picture vision of like, I want to do a book on the art of wrestling because, as you guys said, there's not really anything out there that is there if somebody wants to read it.
Right.
And then once once I, naively, I submit this pitch, and like, here I'm thinking like, oh, this is going to be great. And then I really start thinking about it. And I remember him telling me, he goes, if you go down this path, you got like lucha, you've got Japanese wrestling, you've got American wrestling, you've got French catch. I mean, there's like so many different, like, you can't really write one book on the quote unquote art of wrestling.
Right.
But it started just like that. It started as a concept of, no one's done this before, and it would be something that I would really enjoy reading. It's kind of the basis of the work that I've done, like in the space. And then from there, it just was, well, who's the best at it that I think I can really effectively study start to finish, to like tell the story that I want to tell. And can you see a development of his career where there's same like little pieces of his work all the way through? Like, who's a good subject to like kind of study all that stuff through the eyes of? And, after watching a bunch of stuff and studying a bunch of stuff, like, it became clear, like, all right, I'm going to be able to do this with him as the guy. And then we landed from there.
Wow.
Cool. You were talking about art. And so we have a lot of art, in this book. Thor Jensen.
Yep.
I'm not familiar. So can you tell us a little bit about him?
Yes, man. He is a phenomenal artist. Man, like, it's basically the concept that I wanted. Like, I wanted things to have, because I knew what the book was going to be, like it's not like if you're looking for like, a riveting mystery or page turning, like, novel, like, or like, oh man, I wonder what happens next in Steve Austin's career. Like, this is not that kind of book. It's a book that really it studies, the art of wrestling. And so I wanted to write it the way that I wanted to write it. but I also wanted it to be, you know, appealing from an, you know, eye perspective. And when people are holding it and reading it, like, you know, how can we make it more interesting for them to look at and just spend time with? And so that's when the idea came, all right, well, let's get an artist involved. And the idea initially was, so in the book, I have it outlined. Really, it's all the chapters are the different eras of his career. So we start off like when he's a rookie, and we go to, you know, Stunning Steve, and then Hollywood Blondes, and then the Post Blondes, and ECW, Ringmaster, like, and there's an early Stone Cold chapter in there. Then there's like the hot, you know, Steve Austin, Stone Cold Steve Austin run in there, heel Stone Cold, and then we wrap up with the end of his career. And the last match is his match against Kevin Owens at WrestleMania 38. And like within each chapter, there are a batch of matches that I go through with like fine-tooth comb, like heavy, in depth, all essentially like frame by frame, what's happening in the match, and then, you know, analysis on like what's going on and why is it working, why is it not working, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea initially was, all right, we'll get one piece of art for every era, for every chapter, and the cover. And I told him, like, you know, I'm looking, it's Stone Cold, so I'd like it to be like, you know, a little bit of an edgy cover, a little bit of a rough cover, a little raw. And then you know, same thing with the pictures like inside. And so then send it off to him, and he was like, great. He sent some samples back, and I was like, perfect. Like, this is exactly what we're going for. Great. And so there's 10 chapters in the book. So we were thinking, all right, we're going to get 10 pieces of art back plus the cover. And he sent over 100 pieces of art back. So he got really into it, and was just like, man, I just started going, and like, just, you know, kind of had like the vibe of what we wanted, and just thought, hey, I'm going to just do a bunch more. And of course I was like, well, where are we going to put all of it? But we figured it out, and I think it blends in nice and really breaks up the book a bit, makes it a little more pleasing to the eye. And it's just really cool to have that, you know, it's one of one, like there's no other art. You know, we didn't take it from someone else and pay for rights. Like, we worked with him, you know, we paid him to do the job, and he, you know, made that stuff exclusively for this book. So I forever grateful to him for that. And he was a great partner on this.
Was he a wrestling fan by chance? Was he familiar with Stone Cold, or did you have to say, here are some matches to watch? Because he doesn't just draw Stone Cold. There are other characters, you know.
Yeah.
No,
he's he knows wrestling well. So I was able to just tell him, like, hey, these are the matches that we're doing. You know, and he knows, like, you know, he knew, like, all right, in Brett and Steve at WrestleMania 13, there's, you know, the iconic shot. Like, he knew Owen and Steve, there's the pile drive, you know, like so I didn't have to coach him up too much on that. Really at all. Like, he was able to take it and just, he knew what he wanted to pull out of it. I didn't give him much direction at all on that. We really left it open to him to just, you know, create what he wanted to create, and it ended up working great. I really, if there's a reason to buy this book, like, hey, I think you'll like it from the writing, no question. But the art's worth it. The art's worth it just on its own. It's really cool.
So, being a Chicago guy, and Chicago's known for an illustrious wrestling scene throughout the decades. And Steve Austin has even referenced himself that his favorite venue to wrestle in was the Rosemont. So, a two-part question here, because you know, you've referenced throughout you're an Austin guy. So my first question, have you ever seen Austin wrestle live? And then my second question would be, if you could go back and see one match live of Austin's, what would it be? Because, and I will, to a previous thing we mentioned too, you know, Steve Austin's not the worker Kenny Omega was. He was pre-knees and neck. Him in WCW is a whole different monster. If no one's seen that, you need to go back and look at it. But yeah, I submit my time.
No, well, there's no question. I mean, one of the things like that, one of the things that I think you notice, or like at least like watching all of his essentially like his entire career, like
Mhm.
start to finish, um, is that there, for one, in 1997, there's a clear shift in, okay, I can't do all of these things, so I'm not going to do them and I'm going to do something else. So there's a clear shift in that. Obviously, it didn't matter, but the matches were way different. But man, when you go to like, I mean, he started his career, his first match was in 1989, and really he got rolling in 1990. That's when he was Rookie of the Year, and that's the big feud with Chris Adams in the USWA. Like, he's a, I don't know how to frame this really, but he's a like shining prospect. Like,
Yes.
he's over fast. He gets in ring fast. He becomes a big star really, really fast. Not to like the heights of Stone Cold Steve Austin, but
Right.
he's in WCW in 1991, wrestling Dustin Rhodes in 2 out of 3 Falls matches. Like, he picks it up quick, and you don't obviously when you think of Steve Austin, you think of Stone Cold, but there is some really great stuff prior to that where if you just looked at his matches and was like, all right, I'm watching Raw from 1998, like you're going to get a certain Steve Austin for sure, and a good one. But there's a whole mess of stuff prior to that is really, really good in its own
Austin
right. So
Steamboat.
Oh, right. The Austin Steamboat stuff is amazing. Like, one of my favorite, I'm totally like rambling here, but
Let's do
one
it.
of my favorite chapters that I wrote was the chapter on the Hollywood Blondes. That was one of my favorites because I knew, the least about it really. Like, I knew they were in a tag team together, and I knew the tag team was pretty good, but they were so short-lived that there's not a ton of like prominent tape. So you have to like go back and watch like WCW Superstar or whatever that was, WCW Saturday night and like Worldwide and that stuff to really see them. And then when you watch it, you're like, dang, like this is good stuff. Like they're a really good tag team. So to answer your question, I mean, yes, I was able to see Steve Austin before. I saw him work in the Allstate Arena. It was the first time I saw him live, though, was like heel Austin. It was the episode of Raw where he's whipping Taz with the belt in the middle of the ring with like the Alliance all around.
I do remember that.
I was in the building for that. But then I was in, he had some like in that final run, like 02, there was some Raw stuff that I saw him there too. So not in the heyday though, not in his like hot run. And I think, the match that I would have liked to have been at most, well, I mean, honestly, like personally, like I would have loved to be at that WrestleMania 15 Rock match. I talk about that event in the book as like being like a signature, like part of my fandom. And I go into why, and it's, that's kind of serves as like the prologue, the story of that match and that event. So, I'd love to have been there. It's not his best match, not by a long shot, but for me personally, like that would probably be the one that I would pick to go see because it meant a lot to me at the time.
Amy, did you ever see Steve live?
No, I don't think I did.
I saw him one time. It was his last match at WrestleMania 19. That was the only time I ever saw him.
No kidding. You were in the building for that.
I was there.
Wow.
So actually, when he's that famous shot of him walking, this is a really funny story of him from the back walking down the ramp. If you watch it really close on the left-hand side, as he gets towards the bottom of the ramp, you'll see a hat fly over the handrail onto the floor. So
tell me that's your hat.
It's not. It's actually better than that. So my cousin David and I, it was the day of my 18th birthday. Okay. So my stepdad got us floor seats. And so we were, not trying to be jerks. We would get by the handrail, but not like crowd people. Well, as Austin's coming out, somebody just like ran us over to get to Austin. And my cousin David just looked at me for a second, and then he ran up behind the guy and knocked his hat off. And that's the one you see going over the hand.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna go back and watch that like right after we get off the air here.
But
wonder-
if I want to say Hart Austin would be the one I want to see because that's the easy answer.
Yeah,
But I mean, him
Classic.
and Hunter did some underrated stuff. And to me, him and Dude Love, his first title defense, Dude Love in Milwaukee at Unforgiven, that was fantastic. Like, and I'm a big time Mick Foley guy, so I think that'd probably be the one I'd pick.
that's a great match. I mean, there's so many. I mean, I don't know how you argue. I don't know how I'd argue against WrestleMania 17 either. Like, that's a beauty up until the heel turn, but
Yeah,
like, but also like the spectacle of it is just so like awe-inspiring at the
Right.
time. So yeah, I mean, but there's a lot of good ones. I mean, and then yeah, I mean, you think back, I mean, those Steamboat matches are really good. Like, he's got some like really like deep cut stuff with Sting, you know, that's there. That's cool to watch.
We've
like,
skipped
early
over
90s.
Wrestle War 92 when he was in the only
Wrestle War,
5-star War Games ever. Phenomenal
Yep.
match.
Yep. Phenomenal match. So yeah, there's a lot to pick from.
And even, you know, for his matches against Chris Adams, if you want to go even
Mhm.
further back,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
you know, I mean, talk about a glimmer of what was to come, you know,
Yep.
in those things. You're talking about all the different matches. And one of the things that I do really, really like that you've done in the book at the end of each chapter is kind of the quick hits and
Yeah.
hidden gems. And I really, really like that you know, you give us all these matches
Thank you.
and this overview in the chapter, and then you're like, here's some other little, like you said, hidden gems, things that you probably don't think about. And there are tons. And like you said, if people think of Stone Cold or Steve Austin only as Stone Cold during that little, you know, 3-year, 4-year period,
It's not long, right?
It's
right.
not.
they absolutely are going to be floored when they see, you know, 7/14/91, Steve Austin and Terry Taylor versus Beautiful Bobby and PN New, you know, like
Ugh.
Yeah.
all these different matches. So how did you decide per chapter, if possible, what was going to be like the main focus and matches, and then what you were going to put in like the quick hits and hidden gems section of your book?
Oh, that's an awesome question. So basically, like there were some chapters. Well, it changed chapter to chapter. That's the best answer. So like in some like eras, like the Stone Cold, you know, the Stone Cold Hot era, I knew like which ones I really wanted to focus on. Like I wanted to do all the Rock matches. I wanted to do a Triple H match. You know, like as Steve Austin as a heel, like I wanted to do the Kurt Angle matches. Like I thought, you know,
yeah.
So like with the part of his career that I knew more of, like I kind of pinpointed where I wanted to go before I went there. But prior to that, like I said, for some eras, like I saw like the stuff that, you know, everybody has seen, you know, of Steve Austin in 1991, but not all of it. And so like I started early, well, even before that, in the rookie chapter, I saw almost none of that like that era of his career. I saw some Chris Adams matches and stuff, but collectively, like not a ton. So as I was watching that, I would like, you know, take notes about like, okay, like this is definitely a match to include, or this is, you know, a match that maybe you'd include, but like maybe not. And that's how the quick hits, hidden gems portion of the book started out, because it was like a match that I wanted to include, but I didn't want to put in like the main, like, you know, match analysis.
Right.
So then I would just kind of start filtering those matches over to the hidden gems area. So it came out of just discovering and watching his stuff. I mean, I had an iPad notes thing next to me as I was watching and just, you know, taking notes. And obviously some matches, or a lot of matches, like didn't make the book at all.
Right.
You know, but like,
which is
I remember
amazing to think about as many matches as you give us to watch, either in the hidden gems or you talk about. there's still
Yeah.
matches out there that did not make the cut.
Yeah, like so a good example of this is in the rookie chapter. There's a match where you know, Chris Adams is dressed up as like an army guy and Steve Austin is dressed up as a football player and they're having a wrestling match. And I was like, this is cool. It doesn't really fit with like the big time match analysis, but it's still pretty cool. Like I want to like still talk about it a little bit. So I'll put that there. In 1997, there's a match between Stone Cold and Goldust at Shotgun Saturday Night in the bar, like in the restaurant bar. And I was like, okay, that's awesome. It doesn't fit like the main analysis, but it is something that I think is pretty cool about his career, and artistically it looks cool and it's a fun match. So I just basically then wanted to have like a separate section where I could include some of that stuff. And because I thought, people would be interested in that. So that's how it was born. So it really, like when I was watching his stuff, it became, okay, yes, this goes in like the main category. No, this is completely discarded. Or, all right, let's put it in the quick hit section and go with that. And so it really was just, is it interesting? Does it have some kind of unique or specific importance to it? Because some of those matches are there too, like the inaugural brawl, like at Invasion. Like I didn't talk about that match like in the chapter, but it's still like an interesting match for him to have because he like returns heel in that match. And so I figured, okay, that's important to have, but doesn't fit the actual like main story. So it kind of was like a bit of a catch-all for stuff that almost made the cut, but didn't.
Something like Stories in the Wheelhouse, right, TJ?
That's right. I do like though that she goes to list an example for one of your hidden gems and then list one of the worst scaffold matches that's ever happened.
It was just the first thing I saw. When I opened up the book.
That's just
and so like
that's why I included I'm like, why does that sound familiar? And I looked up, I'm like, oh, that was that match.
It's that match, and I think it's like one of the worst. I think it's one of the worst rated matches on Cage Match ever. Like out of everything, it's one of the worst ones. So like I was like, how do I not include that? Like different reason, a totally different reason. It's very bad art, but it's in there nonetheless.
If you want to find out the night wrestling fans figured out that PN News was afraid of heights, go back to 1992 and watch that match.
Austin has commented on that match and was just like, we had absolutely no business having a match like that up there. It's the drizzling, what's.
Yes, for sure. So as you're figuring out how to tell this story and you kind of went through mapping out his career to the different areas, I would guess the WWF part would be easy because again, that's Stone Cold. That's the most well-renowned. Everyone's seen it. But to me, I find the things I find more intriguing of his story, and we kind of brushed on it so far, is he's in Dallas. At first when he's training, World Class is hanging on for dear life, and then they merge with Jarrett, become the USWA. So he's there, and even with the merger, they're hanging on for dear life.
Yeah.
And then he goes to WCW, and he seems to thrive. The Dangerous Alliance, and then moving on from that, and then he gets injured, loses the TV title or the U.S. title to Jim Duggan in like 11 seconds. And that's pretty much him from WCW. And then he goes to ECW for a cup of coffee, and that's when people figured out he could talk. And I think he only had the one triple threat ladder match there. And then he ends up coming as the ringmaster. So as you're going through the different periods, which period did you find the most interesting and maybe that you didn't know about Austin before?
Yeah, well, it was definitely like the WCW time for sure. I mean, Hollywood Blondes for sure. And honestly, like the post Hollywood Blondes is like really interesting because what you realize when you watch it is he's kind of just like he says out loud like in interviews, I was totally floundering, they didn't have anything for me, like, and it just was like just nothing. I couldn't do anything, couldn't get any momentum. And then you watch that era and it's like, yeah, like it was he was back to kind of to Stunning Steve, but like that had run its course. Like it was like a gimmick that was just had its time and it was done. And he had been kind of a different character already, with Brian Pillman, and he didn't have anybody to play off of, and the booking wasn't behind him, and the matches were okay.
Colonel Robert Parker.
The Colonel that was like, I was like, what? I forgot that they put him with him. And it's like, talk about a mismatch. Like, goodness gracious. Like, it just didn't work. Like, nothing about that time worked for him. Like, in the ring, out of the ring, promos, like, it was all just really flat. And, it's interesting in a different way than the Hollywood Blondes, because the Hollywood Blondes was like, dang, like you watch that whole run and they start off as just a random team and they end up this like well-oiled machine of a tag team.
Mm-hmm.
So you see that kind of magic unfold. And then right after that, it is the complete opposite, where there is no magic. And so analyzing that and like writing about that was just interesting in its own way. Like, again, you're probably not gonna like, oh, I want to go watch a good Steve Austin match. Like, you're not gonna pick something from 1994, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
But it is an important part of his career. Like, when you look at it collectively, all as one, because it had a lot of impact on what he did, past that, both in the ring, but like politically too. Like, when you hear, stories about Steve being a bear to work with, and I want you to have something for me. I want you to have something for me. What's next? What's next? What's next? Well, obviously I didn't like talk to him about this, but you can deduce that, a lot of that paranoia comes from this period where it's like, it just fizzles all away like that, real quick. So it's a really interesting part of his career, albeit not, one that he probably looks back fondly on.
For sure.
What on the talking about the parts of the chapters that, like you said, we all know Stone Cold, and then as you were going back and learning about the different, the beginnings of Stone Cold, how did you decide what matches were the important ones? Like, did you go back and like look at? Because I know, I know at one time you worked with Wade Keller. Do you still work with him? Or are you doing?
I don't work with him anymore. I mean, I still appear on his shows and stuff like that, but I'm not the assistant editor for the Torch anymore. We're off doing our own thing.
I gotcha.
But
I was just going to say that, he would write analysis. I didn't know, like, if on the matches in the era that maybe you weren't as familiar with, what did you go to kind of find out, like, where should I be looking for these matches, or what kind of matches he did have? What is going to be my, the matches that make the chapters, I guess, is what I'm trying to figure out.
So there were three things that I did. The first was, I watched and read a lot of like biographical stuff from him. So like, he has a couple DVD sets out. There's a thing on, and that was able to give me like a rough kind of, these are you don't want to miss this. Like, you don't want to miss Steamboat and Austin. So like, I kind of had like a rough kind of roadmap as to where to go. After that, I went to the Observer and the Torch and used that to like study, okay, what matches was he having? What were the pay-per-views that he was on? And I kind of like benchmarked that on top of like what I had already learned. And then after that, I like was able to like kind of piece together on my own, and with the help of like Cage Match and other resources like that, like a timeline of his entire career, all of his matches, all of them, like even house show matches that he had. And then I laid that in on top. And that was it was those three elements that kind of like directed me like where to go. And after that, then it was just watching. But it really was like, okay, in the rookie year, it's all about Chris Adams. So most of that chapter is about Chris Adams, in like the Stunning Steve chapter, he wrestles Dustin Rhodes like a lot in 1991, a lot. He wrestles Ricky Steamboat a lot. in the Hollywood Blondes, it's a lot of him and Pillman against the Horsemen. Like that's a big time like feud that they've had. So that's kind of how it happened. So just some research and more research, and then watching to kind of confirm like, okay, like Wade liked this Brian Pillman Austin against Ric Flair and Arn Anderson match, but is it as good as, do I think it's as good as he says? And
Mhm.
can I study it for what I'm actually writing about? And once it passed that test, then it was kind of like, okay, we're going to put that in.
Yeah, one more, Amy.
Okay. Well, I didn't know if you wanted me to ask it now, because I was thinking, okay, you're talking about watching the matches and stuff. So I noticed in the dedication that you thanked your mom and dad
Yeah.
for their countless hours of editing, which enhanced the flow of the book. So, like, did you make your mom and dad watch matches too, or what does this dedication mean?
Oh man, yeah. So they didn't watch any matches, but they are
Okay.
both professional editors.
Oh,
That's
okay.
what they do. So when I got hired to do the project, I was like, I kind of hit them up for, would love for you to help out with the editing process of it. So my mom,
okay.
she kind of took it from a copywriting perspective, who was just copy editing it and just like, hey, you don't have a comma here, or this is spelled wrong, or whatever, like that kind of editing.
Okay.
And my dad looked at it from the perspective of like, this makes sense, or like you're using a mixed metaphor here, or like this doesn't make sense, or what are you talking about? Like you've mixed, like, so he took it from more of like the content angle, like,
Right.
and does it. And so the two of them together, along with me, like, and Jonathan, of course,
Mhm.
kind of edited the book. So that's why I mentioned editing. Like it was, it was more hours than they would have ever imagined that they'd be writing about pro wrestling. I can promise you that for sure. But as much as I see like the red pen in my eyes when I go to sleep at night, like I wouldn't have traded it for the world, because it made the book a lot better. And yes, there were times I wanted to huck the computer out the window because there was just too much red.
Yes.
But
Right.
it made, just like anybody editing anything, like it, by the end, it, I was glad to go through that kind of, at times, painful process, because it made it much better.
I kind of was envisioning the Haydorns like sitting and you like, here, mom, you watch this and start in the computer, and dad's over here and you watch this and you write down and you tell me what you think. I could, from a person who doesn't watch wrestling, mom, you just write everything you see. And so now I'm kind of like, I don't know. Now that I know they're editors, I'm kind of like, well, that is not how I envisioned it going.
That would have strained our relationship, I think, if I would have made them do that.
He did a flippy thing.
Yeah, they like my wrestling habit and the what my career in writing about wrestling. But I think hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Steve Austin matches, like they would have to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah.
Somewhere they've seen Steve Austin matches. But I don't know that they have interest in PN News and Steve Austin in a scaffold match.
Oh, so bad.
So bad.
So before we wrap this up here, tell us what else you're doing in writing and your work in journalism as well. I was researching a little bit before the show, and I found about the Block Club.
Yeah.
And then what else are you doing in the wrestling landscape?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, so Block Club's my day job here in Chicago. It's a local news organization that is a not for profit, and it's just it's a total like supported and funded like by the readers. And it's really local in that it like focuses on like Chicago neighborhood news. That's the hook. So yeah, that's what I do. On the day job, I guess you could say, pays those bills that they keep sending me in the mail, or I guess online now. But yeah, so that does that. It's a great organization. If you guys are in the Chicagoland area and can check it out, yeah, there it is, blockclubchicago.org. It's a great, just great news organization and some really good, talented writers ahead of the curve as far as just like their scope and tone on what news should be. So, definitely check them out. But then on the wrestling side of things, we started Brass Ring Media about a year ago. And that is, an organization of me and my team writing about and talking about current event-based pro wrestling. So we're very much like, I would classify us under the learning tree of Wade Keller, like in terms of like how we cover the industry. So it's a lot of long form stuff. We've got, a podcast network on YouTube. There's we're live Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday morning. Not me every single day, but like we've got a team of folks that tackle each of those shows and each of those days. We've got a Substack where you can find all my writing. So I write features for Brass Ring Media, editorials, and also just some kind of fun like show review receipt columns that are there. And you can check me out every day writing that current event based stuff, which is kind of the main way you can find me now is Brass Ring Media. So we're a year old. We've grown like exponentially in the last year. We do offer membership on Patreon, which gets you bonus content from myself and the team. It's only $4 a month. So you can become a member there, patreon.com/Brass Ring Media. And you get a whole bunch of perks. You can try us out for a week. And yeah, if you like the book and you like, the way I'm talking here and you watch, wrestling, I think you'll like kind of what we do at Brass Ring Media, both, audio, video, but also our writing too. I'm really proud of the Substack newsletter that we've built in the last year. I think it covers pro wrestling, the right way.
I like that.
And what I see you, or I try to see you every day at 10 with
yes.
One True
Oh,
Sport.
God.
What do you?
How could I forget that? Yes, that is a wonderful project that I was just incredibly grateful to be asked to do. The team at One True Sport approached me. Hey, do you want to tackle like a kind of a daily news hit show for One True Sport and the One True Sport YouTube channel? And so, yes, every day, 11 Eastern, I am on the air for One True Sport, talking the news of the day, the news of the week, previewing like Raw, SmackDown, NXT, what have you, but mainly, talking to you guys, talking to Amy, talking to everybody else who joins in. We're on YouTube, but you can also catch us on Rob Van Dam's Twitter feed. We broadcast all sorts of places. And so, yeah, really pumped to be a part of that. That's been going, we're almost on episode 60 with that. We've done a lot of episodes there. Really? So that's a really fun thing. And really, it doesn't take a long time to listen to. I try to get in and out. It's close to 30 minutes. I know all of you have very important things to do that don't necessarily include listening to me for 2 hours. But yeah, check that out too. And you'll hear me plug Brass Ring Media stuff there. But it's One True Sport on YouTube.
Nice. Yes, it's really good if you're like me and you have to go to bed before Raw is over. Like, what exactly happened? He's really good at recapping what happened, or if there's something in the news to talk about. So I do. If I can, if I'm not in a meeting or something, I do like to turn that on and listen to what you and the group, everybody is saying and stuff like that. Kind of keep.
I always love seeing your name pop up in the live chat. Like, oh, Amy's here. All right, good. This is gonna be. At least there's one person out there listening. So
that's right. That's right.
I'm like one of the first traveling champion members. So now I have.
There you go. Now you got a show, man. Yeah. Pressure's on. Pressure's on.
Yes, but I want to know too. I really do think you have something with the format of this book. Who's next?
Mick Foley.
Oh, yeah.
So yes, there is a batch of ideas running around in my head, and something will be next. It's
Mhm.
coming. There's two. I mean, there's really two people where I kind of land.
Mhm.
The first is Shawn Michaels. I think
Mhm.
that he'd be an interesting study, and then a totally different study than like Steve Austin's
Right.
matches, like totally just different style, different art,
Mhm.
different everything.
But kind of us starting at the same place in a
But
way.
yeah, but there
You
is
know.
like an element of, and there's like eras of his career too that you can
Mhm.
kind of go and study. So it very much like from a format perspective, like fits like the
Mhm.
same type of theme. So I think he would work, and he'd be a really interesting person to do. The other one that would be a much bigger lift, but that I can't quite get out of this brain is to do Ric Flair,
Mm,
and to try to do that. Like obviously, we're talking about a longer career by a
Mhm.
wide margin, but man, it'd be interesting to have that down on paper. So
It would be.
I'm not sure yet, but like those are some ideas that we're kicking around, and I'm kicking around and uh, prepping for a little bit. But we'll see. No news to break yet on that.
well, if you need someone to research Ric Flair's career starting back in 1971,
Okay. Well,
I
don't
might know someone.
Yeah. Yes.
I was going to say, TJ is a writer. I bet if you didn't know that, if you ever needed
No
any
one knows that.
assistance. Oh, you are too. You are
Yeah,
a writer.
do tell. Wait, so like,
Yes,
do you have
you are.
something already written about Ric Flair from
No,
1971?
I do not.
Okay, I was like,
That was just me being a research dork, and I would love to do that. But I've written a few articles. I quit writing articles and kind of went to interviews for PW Mania,
oh, fun. Yeah,
but I
yeah,
stopped even doing interviews lately because my job is just too extreme. Extreme's not the right word, but it's too time consuming.
yeah.
But years ago, I'm not even sure if I've told Amy this. Years ago, when I was working, I worked midnights at a factory,
Wow.
and I had a lot of downtime, as weird as that sounds, at my job. And I started writing a book. It was called Packed to the Rafters. And it was, the most socio prescient storylines from 1980 to 2000 was where I stopped. And it started with the first one I did was Jerry Lawler on the set of David Letterman with Andy Kaufman. That was
Wow.
the first one I did. And I think I stopped with the Triple H Cactus Jack retirement match at No Mercy. Was that No Mercy? Yeah, No Mercy 2000. And as you know, the average novel length is 67,000 words. When I got done with 2000, I was at 97.
Wow.
So I need to find a way to.
How did you write about those matches? Like, what was the like, what were you doing with them? Just
So
like rewriting feuds or what?
Well, he definitely didn't have your mom and dad editing. I can tell you that.
Well, hey,
At
they're happy to help.
97,000.
well, my mom and dad would be like, my dad barely reads, like, let alone edits. So I went back and kind of recounted the whole feud, but through the eyes of the fan.
Got it.
So like
cool.
the events that happened through like almost like if you were watching it on TV.
Wow, that's
And
that. Hey, you never know. One of the things that Jonathan told me was like, like nothing's anything until you decide to make it something.
True.
So you may have something there, my friend.
I still have it. I still
have
it.
You may have something there. That's awesome.
That's right. You only told me about the Cubs fan book.
I also wrote a Cubs book, yeah. But then
I didn't know about that one.
The title of my Cubs book was the Diary of a Mad Cubs Fan. Well, then they went and won the World Series, so now it's worthless. Now I can't post it now. I can't publish it now.
Can you write a Sox fan one, please? I can be the
just
primary.
For this season.
I don't know, my whole life really, except for that 1 year.
Except for 05.
Yeah, that's it.
I can do a whole chapter just on what's the guy that's playing first for y'all, not Gavin Sheets, but Andrew Vaughn. I can do a whole chapter just on Andrew Vaughn.
Nobody
this is what he was supposed to be. He's batting 197.
Nobody likes that guy.
Dude,
well,
we had Milton Bradley. Okay,
that is bad. Yes, that's bad.
I feel you.
That's bad. You. Yeah.
I was going to say, whoever you decide, whatever the topic ends up being, I really do think that it's going to be, like I said, I really think you're onto something with the way you wrote your book. I do.
Yes.
And
Thank
so
you very much.
I
Thank
do
you.
think the next topic, I think it's going to be well received. So I can't wait to see what it's going to end up being.
I appreciate that, and thank you guys for having me on. If anybody out there wants to pick up the book, it's on Amazon right now. You can pick it up. It's got an insanely quick turnaround time, so you'll have it quick. We've got obviously paperback copies out there, but also every kind of digital e-edition that you could want is there too. Kindle e-edition. I don't know. There's a couple other formats that we put out. So yeah, definitely pick it up. I think you guys will like it, and I'd love to hear your feedback. Leave a review on Amazon. I mean, that helps a ton. Like, kind of get the book out there more. So thank you in advance if you decide to pick it up, and you can find me on Twitter. Hit me up. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you decide to do it.
Well, thank you, Zach. This has been a very good conversation, and again, another good look into the process of writing a book in the wrestling landscape. He is Zach Heydorn. That's Miss Amy from Kentucky up above me. I am TJ Stevens, bidding you farewell until the next Power of the Pen.